Okay, good evening, my dear students. So today's topic is plant tissue. Plant tissue. So plant tissues are classified into two types. That is meristematic tissues and permanent tissues. So again, meristematic tissues means they are in continuous state of division, whereas a permanent tissues, they mainly helps in the uh, it gives mechanical strength and also do other functions. So whereas the meristematic tissues, they mainly helps in plant growth. Meristematic tissues, they are classified into three types: apical meristematic tissues, intercalary meristematic tissues, and lateral meristematic tissues. Permanent tissues, they are classified into two types: simple permanent tissues and complex permanent tissues. Simple permanent tissues again classified into three types: parenchyma, collenchyma, and sclerenchyma. Whereas the complex permanent tissues, they are classified into xylem and phloem. So plant tissues are of two main types, that is, they are meristematic tissues and permanent tissues. So meristematic tissues means these are three types. They are apical meristematic tissues, lateral meristematic tissues, and intercalary meristematic tissues. Whereas the permanent tissues are two types, they are simple permanent tissues. So simple permanent tissues are nothing but they are made up of similar type of cells. Whereas the complex permanent tissues, they are made up of two types of cells. Two types of cells. They are parenchyma, collenchyma, and sclerenchyma. Complex permanent tissues are two types. They are xylem and phloem. So meristematic tissues means cells of meristematic tissues are very active and they have dense cytoplasm, thin cellulose, and prominent nuclei, and they lack vacuole. So these are the characteristics of the meristematic tissues. So meristematic tissues, they contain dense cytoplasm, that is large amount of cytoplasm, and the cell wall is made up of thin cellulosic walls and prominent nucleus is present, and they lack vacuoles. And the growth of the plants occurs only in certain specific regions because of the presence of the dividing tissues known as the meristematic tissue. So the growth of the plants occurs only at the regions of the meristematic tissue. So meristematic tissues are found in the growing regions of the plants like tips of the root, stem, and branches, and they provide continuously and help in the growth of the plant. And the characteristics of the meristematic tissues are, so they have the very small and few vacuoles, and meristematic tissues are living and thin walled. Protoplasm of the cells is very dense, so more amount of protoplasm is present, and the cells of the meristematic tissues are young and immature, and they do not store food materials. So these meristematic tissues, they do not store the food materials, and they exhibit a very high metabolic activity. Here the cells shows high metabolic activity, and the possess a single large and prominent nucleus. So these are the characteristics of the meristematic tissues. So they have very small and few vacuoles, and meristematic tissues are living and thin walled, and protoplasm of the cells is very dense. Cells of the meristematic tissues, they have the young and immature, and they do not store food materials and exhibit very high metabolic activity, and possess single large and prominent nucleus. So here we can observe the single large nucleus. So depending on the region, so again the meristematic tissues are classified into different types based on the different characters. So here, based on the position, they are classified into three types: apical meristem, lateral meristematic tissues, and intercalary meristematic tissues. So apical meristematic tissues means these are present in the tips of the stems and roots, and they help in the growth of the stems and roots. Lateral meristematic tissues, they are present in the sides of the stems and roots, and they help in increase the girth, that is thickness of the stems and roots. Whereas the intercalary meristematic tissues, these are present at the base of the leaves and internodes, and help in the growth of those parts, that is mainly leaves and internode, increase the internodal region and also the base of the leaf. based on the location of the meristematic tissues in the plant body. So here the at this region, so apical meristematic tissues are present in apical region of the stem. So intercalary in between the cell tissues, that is intercalary meristem. So here the base of the leaf are base of the internodal region. So here the intercalary meristem is present. Lateral means, so here they are present parallel to this stem, so lateral meristems. So based on the position, meristematic tissues are three types. And next one is meristematic tissues. So they mainly helps in the and they are, and the main function of the meristematic tissues are continuous state of division, whereas the permanent tissues. So another one is permanent tissues. So permanent tissues are, they are formed from the meristematic tissues only, and they do not divide and have permanent shape and size. They do not divide. So permanent tissues, they do not divide, and they give permanent shape and size to the plant, and they differentiate into different types of permanent tissues. So permanent tissues are of two main types, that is simple permanent tissues and complex permanent tissues. Another type is also there, that is special tissues. So we will discuss this later. So mainly we discuss about simple permanent and complex permanent tissues. So simple permanent tissues. So simple permanent tissues are made up of one type of cells, and there are of three types of simple permanent tissue. So first one is the parenchyma, second one is collenchyma, and third one is the sclerenchyma. So parenchyma. So parenchyma means it consists of relatively unspecialized cells with thin cell walls, and they are the living cells, and they are usually loosely arranged. Thus, large spaces between the cells, that is with intercellular spaces, and are found in these tissues. So, parenchyma, these are the examples for parenchymatous cells. So, parenchymatous cells are arranged loosely with intercellular spaces, and cells contain cytoplasm, nucleus, and vacuoles, and the cell wall is thin walled here in parenchyma. So these are the different types of parenchyma. So when we take the transfer section, so we can observe like this. So generally permanent parenchyma cells are round or oval in shape. So these are the when we take the longitudinal section, so it contains cytoplasm, nucleus, middle lamella, chloroplast, vacuole, intercellular spaces, and primary cell wall. So generally, parenchyma cell, it is made up of cellulose and calcium peptides. Next one is the functions of the parenchyma. So the main function of the parenchyma cells are to store materials like starch, proteins, hormones, etc., and waste products such as tannins, resins, etc. And the parenchyma cells perform the metabolic activities of the cell. And some parenchyma cells in the leaves contain chloroplast and prepares food by photosynthesis. So these type of parenchymatous cells are called as the chlorenchymatous cells. That is parenchyma cells with chloroplast, they contain the chlorenchyma. Some parenchyma cells have large cavities, that is called as the aerenchyma, so which mainly helps in the plant to float on the water. So these aerenchyma cells, generally they are seen in the hydrophytes. So some parenchyma cells of the roots and stems store water and minerals. Next one is the collenchyma. So collenchyma, the cells of the collenchyma tissues are living, elongated, and irregularly thickened at the corner. So there is very little intercellular spaces. So when we compare with the parenchyma with collenchyma, collenchyma cells are thick-walled and living one, and they are irregularly thickened at the corners and with little intercellular spaces. So the main functions of the collenchyma are, they give flexibility and allows easy bending of the different parts of the stem, leaf, etc. And they also give mechanical support to the plant. Last one is the sclerenchymatous tissue. So whereas the parenchyma and collenchyma, they are called as the living cells, whereas the sclerenchyma cells, they are called as the dead cells, because here the protoplasm is absent at maturity. Here another point is, that is collenchyma, it is made up of cellulose and lignin. Sorry, so collenchyma cells made up of cellulose, hemicellulose and pectin, whereas the sclerenchyma cells, they are made up of lignin. So the cells of the sclerenchyma cells are dead and they are long and narrow as the walls are thickened due to lignin. So often these walls are also so thick that there is no intercellular spaces. So here the intercellular space is also absent. The cell walls contain lignin, a chemical substance which act like a cement and hardens them. And the functions of the sclerenchyma are: the sclerenchyma cells provide mechanical support to the plant and allows the organs to withstand bending, shearing, compression and pull caused due to environmental factors. So it also supports transportation of water and nutrients to the plants, and it also gives rigidity, and that is it gives mechanical strength um, to the plants, and also prevents leaves of the plants to collapse due to wilting. So forms a major part of the fruit pit shared outer cells of the nuts. So these are the different types of cells, that is parenchyma cells, collenchyma and sclerenchyma. So these are the thin walled cells and they are with intercellular spaces large, whereas these are also somewhat thick walled when compared to parenchyma. And here, less intercellular spaces may be observed and unevenly thickened cells. So these are the sclerenchyma cells. They are thick walled with without numerous protoplasm. So comparison between parenchyma, collenchyma and sclerenchyma. So parenchyma cells made up of cells having a very thin cell and consist of living cells at maturity. Whereas the collenchyma, they are plant tissues, then consist of living elongated cells with unevenly thickened walls and consist of living cells at maturity. And sclerenchyma made up of thick and rigid cell wall and consist of dead cells at maturity. Thus, why they are because protoplast is absent here. So usually isodiametric in shape, and however they can still have other various shapes. Here the cells are usually polygonal in shape. Here the cells are tubular in shape in sclerenchyma. The cell wall is made up of cellulose. Here the cell wall is made up of pectin and hemicellulose. In sclerenchyma the cell wall is made up of lignin. So cells are loosely packed in parenchyma cells, whereas in the collenchyma the cells have little spaces between cells, whereas the sclerenchyma the cells have no intercellular spaces present between them, and cells are tightly packed. So plays a major role in gas exchange, storage of food materials, and also synthesis. The parenchyma cells mainly helps in the photosynthesis. Air cavities present in the uh, the parenchyma cells with air cavities, they mainly helps in the bioency. So plays, whereas the collenchyma, they plays a role in providing mechanical support to the plant. And cells here also, sclerenchyma cells also provide mechanical support to the plant and also support transportation of water and minerals. Next one so I will stop here. In next class we will continue.